What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Inside the Show podcast. I'm Ryan, your host, and it just feels really good to be back here. Kind of just sitting at home right now, and I got a really special guest that's joining me today. Max Barnes is a good friend I know from John Carroll, where I go for my undergrad, and I met him in my professional development for psych class. And he's a freshman, incoming freshman, and he plays football at Carroll. So, hey, man, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm excited to be a part of this fun journey that you're on.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm praying for it, like, to eventually kind of get up in the air. I want to have my own studio at one point. I think that'd be freaking sweet. So we don't have to do like computer, like FaceTime kind of
Yeah.
things. So I think it'd be cool to get like stuff in person.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome too. Yeah. So that's your big goal right now?
Right now, yeah. I mean, I got a couple goals that are coming through the waterworks, but that is probably like a what do you want to do and where do you want to be in like 5 years? That's like one of the goals I got going on right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, like Dear My Future Self, like you talked about a little couple
yes,
episodes
sir.
ago.
Yes, sir.
Dear My Future Self, can't wait to be in a studio talking face to face instead of over the
Yep.
computer.
Yep. All right. So as we always do, we got quote of the week coming up here. Um, and I say this every person I bring on, I always like to have the guest go first. So Max, take it away, brother.
So one that just popped up on my feed the other day. I've always been a big Tim Tebow
Mm.
follower. I'm a huge football fan. I watched him when I was younger. So this one just came up the other day. This is quote, "The greatest form of tragedy is being successful at everything that doesn't matter." Unquote. That really hit for me because the term success in this world is pushed like you got money, you got a big
Yep.
house, you got all the cars that you want, and that's just something that I don't really desire for my life. And I would rather be successful in my faith and being successful in being a family
Mm.
man and having kids and a loving wife and growing God's community through my family, having a couple good friends that I can rely on and lean on when I'm not doing so well. And yeah, those are the types of things that I would rather be successful in than having all the money in the world and not having anybody to love
Yeah.
me.
I like that. I've seen that clip you're talking about. It's when he's getting interviewed by that one guy who interviews all the billionaires or all the millionaires, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
saw that I believe it was last week. And with that quote, it was really powerful because I kind of thought the same thing what you were thinking. Um, but in terms of like the money aspect, I was thinking of like being rich and like kind of like you were saying, rich in faith, but like I'm not rich because I have money. I'm rich because I have God in my life. I'm rich because I'm opening
Absolutely.
the Bible constantly. I'm feeling connected with Him, and I think that's like the end goal. And I think that's what Tim Tebow was trying to like describe to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I felt like it was a really good like switch up on that account especially. Like what that guy does is
Hmm.
awesome. Going and interviewing all these successful people in terms of what they've done in their jobs and helping people in their professional development. But that was a good switch from like stepping away from he's always talking about like how much money have you
Yeah.
made in a year, and Tebow kind of just like put that aside a little bit and dropped that fire quote
Yeah.
there. So I really enjoyed that.
Tim Tebow for the win, man. That guy's incredible what he's doing. What is the movement he's doing right now? He's like a lead activist in like sex trafficking right now, like trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, he's just the stuff that I've seen, he does like these talks on how like the sex trafficking like epidemic
Mm,
almost in this world has like gone way too
yeah.
far. And he's like just being a huge advocate right now against it. And it's something that we really need. Because he's right, it has been a huge issue for the longest time now. And it's really cool to see somebody with such a popular following like him really
Hmm.
step up because he's not necessarily popular in those types of areas. He's like the athlete, leadership development type guy. And then when he really came out in his faith and started doing stuff like this, his following has only grown. So yeah, it's a really cool thing to
for
see.
sure. Yeah, I love Tim Tebow. A lot of the stuff he's done on like a couple podcasts he's gone on have been really good. The
Hmm.
quote I got a quote of the week and I got a verse of the week. Um, I can start with the verse just because we're kind of already on that topic. Um, but the verse of the week I had was, "We must obey God rather than men," and it comes from Acts chapter 5, verse 29. And this is the chapter where, if I have it right here, it's right before they're choosing the new disciple, or like a new, hold on, chapter 5, because it's right before chapter 7, and chapter 7 is, oh, this is before they're going to court. This is before they're getting prosecuted because of their faith in Jesus and
Hmm.
they're preaching the gospel like on the streets. And a lot of the um like the Jewish community is kind of upset because they're like, you're not following the law, you're not following the law of Moses, like you're disrupting to, you're not preaching the right things essentially. And they're bringing them to court, and in the court this was said by one of the disciples of Jesus. Pretty sure that was Peter. Peter said that. Simon Peter, yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason I love that a lot is because I talk about this a lot on the podcast already, but literally just the fact that our entire world is rooted in sin at this point.
Hmm.
Like you see it all the time. It goes back to just Adam and Eve, the story of them bringing sin into the world when they ate from the forbidden tree, the forbidden fruit, um, and the devil, persuading them to fall through with that. And ever since that day, like we've had wars, we've had things happen that are terrible. And now it's kind of just like lust is a huge one for men. We'll get into that later, but lust is huge right now. And in the process of trying to battle all of these things, we try to look to God for a pathway through those things. And I think by obeying God and his rules and like what we read here in the Bible is our basically like, I don't want to use pathway again, but I would say just it'll give us like an outlook for how we should live our life and how to avoid these things, even though they're so present in today's world. So just obeying God instead of listening to men, because we know that God's eternal and men aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the word is just so powerful. Um, in Paul's letter to the Ephesians in chapter 6, he says he refers to the Bible as the sword of
Mm,
spirit. Um, and that's always like really sat with me because there's always like so many questions people have about
yeah,
Christianity because there are a lot of confusing topics, right? And there's a lot of things that people say that lead them in all these different directions. But what I've really been trying to do is really just digest what the
yeah,
word says and what God has to say. And another thing, our little Bible study group that we have for the football team here at John Carroll, on Tuesday, we were just talking about Philippians chapter 2, which is a lot about humility in
mm,
Jesus. And at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow and every tongue acknowledge that he is Lord. Just taking the glory away from ourselves and giving it to him, which is a really difficult
yeah,
thing for us to do because we're constantly seeking the pat on the back or the compliments. But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what he calls us to do, and that's what gives him glory, and that's what
yeah.
must be done.
And that's a good segue to my quote of the week and not the verse of the week. Um, I don't know who this is from. I just saw it and I thought it was great. I tried to find it, like like who said this online. I couldn't find it,
Yeah,
but it says, "You don't learn to swim by reading about water." And if you kind of take it at face value, you're kind of like, "What?" But you look into it more, and it's like yeah, you can't swim if you are reading about water. You have to get in, you have to dive in, and you have to start learning
Yeah.
how to do it. And it's almost like the way I took it was breaking free of your comfort zone, staying on land and going into something you're not comfortable doing, which is water, or,
Mm.
that's a metaphor for, I don't know, starting a new job or something like that. Um, and it's almost like our comfort zones are like cages almost, I think of it. And let's say you're an animal at the zoo in a cage and you're in your comfort zone, you're in your bubble, let's say, your environment, and you break out, you are more free now than ever, right? And you will learn to do more things if you go into the wild, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I think of it, where if you're so cooped up in this environment for so long, you're going to be comfortable there. But once you get out, you're not going to really know what to do, which leads you to be uncomfortable. Then, therefore, growth happens, and you're able to live a more free life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you first just said that just now, I didn't think about the whole comfort zone thing, but that's a really good way of putting it. I spend a lot, I'm not gonna lie, I do spend a lot of time in my
Yeah.
comfort zone. My whole life I really did. And I've been working on it recently. Like you saw us just the other day, me and my friend Andrew have been sitting in the atrium of the
Yep.
student center taking prayer requests. And when like that was his idea, and when he first brought it up to me, I was like, I don't know, that's like kind of
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. Um, but we've both really, really grown
Yeah.
from doing that. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, experience is huge. And not that you can't do a little research on something before you jump in, but really just going into something with
Yep.
enthusiasm and controlling your response to the event you're in, which is I'll talk about a little later, is huge. And yeah, I absolutely love
Yeah.
that.
It's crazy because, I mean, that's what our body wants, though. We talk about like homeostasis all the time. Our body wants to stay kind of like flatline, like they just want to stay mellow the entire time. They want to survive in the
Hmm.
easiest way possible. They don't want to really, our bodies don't want to work hard. So I guess when you, and
Hmm.
I talked about this in the last episode, talking about dopamine, when you go through something hard and you go through a challenge and you have that dopamine spike, you're going to feel good after you've come out of, you've been in homeostasis for a little bit. And then when you spike, your cortisol levels, you're doing something difficult. That's when real change happens, just physically, even in like, um, an academically sense, because we're in school together. I mean, even when you are studying something that's difficult and then you get to a point where you know the material really well for something, for an exam, and then you get a little bit of boost of dopamine because you feel good about the material, because you feel confident in your ability to perform on that test.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and biologically speaking, we're both psychology guys, so we know that our brain wants to spend as much time in automatic processing
Yep.
as possible. Cognitive ability is very limited in our human mind because we just want to coast. We want to be on autopilot. We don't want to have to like critically think in every scenario. But yeah, it's very important to challenge yourself so that you can build your cognitive ability. And the situations that are difficult now, you can go on autopilot someday because you're just that
Yeah.
good at them.
Yeah, I really like that. Um, all right, let's kind of segue here to kind of the main topic for today. I did send you an article too to read, but I think we'll get into
Hmm.
that later because there's not too much to go off of it. But I really want to talk about why humans crave control,
Hmm.
and some anxiety and maybe some uncertainty in their lives. So, why do you feel the need to, I guess, from your personal perspective, why do you feel the need to control everything? Like, why do people crave control?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that I've been studying up on a little bit in my social psychology class. And as soon as it came up in conversation, I just like immediately was intrigued by it. Um, the psychological concept of the human desire to be in control. And there are a lot of things that come with it. Um, all these things like the confirmation bias and the
Yep.
victim blame, all these things, these concepts that just reaffirm the fact that my teacher, Dr. Yost, always talks about like being the captain of our
Mm.
ship. And we have this tendency to blame others when they get into a situation that they shouldn't be in and they get in some trouble or they get hurt. We have a tendency to actually blame them, even if there was an outside factor that they couldn't control, because we feel if they're not the captain of their own ship, then we aren't in control of our
Yeah.
own ship. And yeah, so control for me, like the biggest thing, I was always, there's a difference between a control freak and being in control.
Yeah.
A control freak is seen as like somebody who constantly needs to be doing something, needs to know everything, needs to, I don't know, needs to know everything about everyone and control the people around them because they don't trust the people around them enough to just let
Mhm.
them be. And being in control is controlling you, not worrying about what's going on outside of you, these outside factors, just controlling you. My mother always told me growing up, there's only two things in life that you can control: your effort and your
Mm.
attitude. And I found that's something that's very true. I've noticed that there are a lot of subsections to effort and attitude, but at the end of the day, I feel like it all boils down to those two things, and a lot of people don't always recognize that.
Yeah. Props to Mrs. Barnes for that banger quote. That
Yeah, yeah,
that is
big time.
crucial because I mean, if you don't put it's just simple like discipline, simple work ethic. If you can't put in the work, put in the time, you're not going to achieve what you actually want to achieve, right? And some
Yeah.
people, what I think is really funny, well, not funny, but I think it's interesting because people put in minimal effort nowadays, and they are complaining about why they didn't succeed, right?
Yeah.
And I hate the thing that's going around, like the stigma. Like I see a lot of like older people coming down on our generation like, "Oh, it's so easy to succeed in our generation because nobody works very hard." When clearly you can see, sure, that's applicable to some people in our generation, sure. But
Hmm.
when you apply it to, I know like if you see this circle we're in, me, you, people at Carroll, like we work hard. Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
not to just I mean, I understand what they're seeing because it's the phone thing, it's the social media, I get that. But it is interesting to people that don't actually do any work, don't do anything to achieve something. They're just like, "Oh, well, why didn't I get this thing?" Right? And they're not putting two and two together. So I actually really want to study that eventually and how that how that goes on. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I mean, there's good and bad
yeah.
sides to this desire for control. Obviously the bad sides are what I
Mhm.
mentioned. Um, and then in addition, like these constant thoughts in our head that like we need to be perfect
Yeah.
and our heads get clouded with like these thoughts of failure. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of good sides to it. In terms of like
Yeah.
self-motivation, it's good for our physical health, like needing to control our workouts,
Mhm.
our exercise, all that, and then obviously really good for independence, not always needing to rely on others around us. So yeah, there's good and there's
Mhm.
bad sides to it. Um, and yeah, I absolutely loved what you said, and people who don't put in the work and then complain about not getting the prize. Um, I mean, we've already thrown out a couple of verses, but another one that's coming to my mind right now is in the First Corinthians chapter 10, I believe, where Paul's in prison and he talks about how don't you know that all the runners run, but only one wins the prize. One wins the prize. Run so as to obtain it. I'm fact checking myself right
No,
now. I think I
I
can hear you flipping
actually
pages
was
too.
flipping to it too. Um, and I think
Yeah.
think
Chapter
Chapter
9.
9.
It's chapter 9 at the very end. Yeah. Yeah, but that one just popped into my head. Like, I actually wrote my college essay about that
Mhm.
verse, which kind of upsets me that I didn't know it off
No,
the top of
you're
my
good.
head. But um yeah, running to win the prize, like in everything you do. And that doesn't always mean that we have to be number
Yeah.
one and we have to be perfect. But running as hard as you possibly can every single day will get you what you deserve at the end of the day. And you can sit back and look at yourself in the mirror and
Mm,
evaluate, did I give my all today? And if you did, then that's a
yeah.
good day.
What would you say to somebody who's kinda struggling with that, though? I've been in a situation where I've done that, right? And I used to be like a super hard perfectionist ideal and, like, my mindset. I used to look at
Hmm.
myself in the mirror, and I would self-evaluate every day, and there were a couple of days where I'm like, "I didn't get better today," and I would beat myself up over it, and it would just be, like, a spiral of bad negative emotions. Like, what would you say to somebody who's doing that now?
Yeah. So the thing that I would say is oftentimes there are things that are outside of our control that affect our lives in negative ways. And we can't always beat ourselves up over those things. We have to recognize that sometimes it's not always our fault. Um, but in terms of like the things that you can control and you
Mhm.
failed and it was on you, um, something that I've started doing recently is like at the end of the day when I'm doing the self
Yeah.
analyzation and those things, kind of recognizing the places that I failed and almost like kind of cracking a smile, recognizing the fact that I have the opportunity to now
Mm,
grow. Um, my self motto is I'm on a relentless pursuit to become the best version of myself. I feel like a lot of people are constantly chasing other people, which is good.
yeah.
Competition keeps us in growth, but don't ever try and be somebody else because God created you to be you. Um, God created you to become the best version of yourself. And that's just what I'm trying to do each and every day. So the biggest thing I would say to somebody who is really doing this self-analyzation and beating themselves up is stop trying to control yourself in ways that you can't
Mm,
handle. Stop trying to be that guy who is, let's just say, bench pressing
yeah.
more than you. Just work as hard as you can to become yourself. Envision yourself bench pressing whatever it is, 315. That's
405.
my goal right now. Yeah. Yeah. See, like we're on completely different levels. Like first time that I was in the gym with you and I had to come spot you and you were freaking shoulder pressing the hundreds and I failed the 70s like 20 minutes before that. So, yeah, I mean, we're constantly in our lives seeing people that are better than us at things. And another thing that we actually just talked about on Friday in my social psych class is comparison to
Mm,
other people. And we find the most like our self-esteem spikes the most when we compare ourselves to those who are worse than us
interesting. Okay.
because we boost ourselves up like, "Oh, I'm better than
Yep.
that guy." So, I'm I'm
Yeah.
doing better. Um and it's good to do that sometimes, like recognize that you're not the worst, I guess, in a sense, um but our self-esteem, it does go down when we are comparing ourselves to
Yeah.
the best. Um but I have a vision for who I want to be in my life. I have passions and I have
Mhm.
goals and I know what I want and I'm chasing that guy. Like Matthew McConaughey talked about when he won his first Oscar, like who's your hero? And he said
Yep.
me in 10 years.
And 10 years
That
after
that
that.
speech,
Yep.
like, yeah, yeah, 10 years and 10 years. I'm he's just constantly chasing
Yep.
that guy that is him. So yeah, that'd be the biggest thing for me is trying to become the best version of
Mhm.
yourself and not being someone that you're
Yeah.
not.
And I guess to add on to a little bit of that is kind of like wrapping what you said into like one sentence is like comparison is the thief of joy. I don't know if you've heard that a lot.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but essentially what I did to kind of get me out of that funk, because it was like a year-long funk that I was like, if I'm not perfect in XYZ, I'm worthless. Right.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I was in the same
right.
spot.
The biggest thing that helped me, I know people out there that are perfectionists and they deal with this. I understand, and it's kind of normal when you're trying to go after something you really want, um, is kind of like what you were saying, cracking a smile at things that you didn't do well at today or whatever day it was,
Hmm.
and recognizing that there is another opportunity to get better at it, because we're never going to be perfect at anything, right? We can always constantly work towards something that's going to make us better and going to excel us to like a new level, like bench pressing the 100-pound dumbbells, or 110s, 120s. Um, or even if you're just starting out in the gym, it's like 30, 40, 50-pound dumbbells. It wherever you're at, whatever level you're at, to get to that next level, you have to look at it as, okay, well, I failed the 50s today, but 2 months ago I couldn't even lift the 50s, and I
Hmm.
did 40s last week for 5 reps. Like, progress is not linear at all. Like, you could be sick for two
No.
weeks and you could come back to the gym and you're really weak, because yeah, progress is never going to be a straight line up. It's never going to happen. So the biggest thing I would tell you, and kind of just to add on to what you were saying, is just be grateful that your entire life you have moments where you can excel at certain things, and it's an opportunity to get better at those things, right? If I'm
Yeah.
perfect at every single thing, there's nothing else for me to do. And I
Yeah.
think that's a blessing, because, or that's not a blessing. I think what's a blessing is you have the opportunities to get better. You're never going to be this best version of yourself. Like you were saying with Matthew McConaughey, your best version is 10 years ahead of you, is 10 years ahead of you. It's never going to
Hmm.
be the best version of yourself. Is probably when you're done with life. Is probably when you've experienced everything and you've gone through your life, and
Yep.
then you go to heaven. Then you die, pass away, and get resurrected. Like that. That to me is probably going to be your end goal. Is when you die, you can look back on your life and go, okay, well, I wasn't perfect, but did I work my ass off? Did I work like day and night, to try to get better at these areas of my life? That is probably the
Hmm.
thing that I would tell somebody, is that you're never going to be able to be perfect, but you can have opportunities to be better. Not perfect, but better at those things.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, our coach in football last year always talked about being a constant pursuit of
Mm,
better each day, trying to stack each day. And like you said, growth is not a straight line, or it's going to be a roller coaster ride no matter what area of your life it's in. And I also really liked what you had to say about comparison, and referring back to what I just said about self-esteem spikes when we compare ourselves to those below us. What and then relating it to what you said, we can spike our self-esteem by looking back on where we were and how much we've grown to get to where
yep.
we are now, and use that as motivation to keep on growing to get to your
Hmm.
next goal. So, yeah, yeah, I absolutely loved what you had to
Yeah.
say there.
Going kind of back on the control topic. What happens when we lose control? Because I know you talked about control freaks, right? And how their
Mhm.
obsessiveness, and that's the obsessive behavior. Um, yeah, can you talk about what happens when you lose control?
Yeah, for me and for a lot of others that I've talked to, like mentally, we just get overridden with
Mm,
anxiety, stress, and that's mostly because we are uncertain about the current state that we are in, which causes us to develop two things: a fear of the future and we overthink what has happened in our past that got us to this
Mm,
point. And overthinking is the same as comparison. I find overthinking as the thief of joy. Um, but when we feel that we've lost control, when we're in this state where we just don't know what's going on, we aren't sure what stage we're in our lives. We look back. Well, sometimes we don't even look
yeah,
back, which is bad in and
yeah.
of itself, and we just kind of sit in that state. But when we do look back and overthink the steps that got us here, that's when we can find ourselves falling backwards instead of
Mm,
growing. And then in terms of fear of the future, that keeps us from trying again, trying harder, um, continuing this pursuit to become the best version of ourselves. Um, I was reading a book by PJ Fleck and John Gordon. PJ Fleck, the head coach of Minnesota Golden Gophers football. It's called Row the Boat, which is like
mhm.
his saying that everybody knows in college football. And the biggest thing that I took away from that was one quote he said, "Don't let pain from the past or fear of the future keep you from rowing,
Yeah,
pursuing toward your
wow.
dreams." And when we've lost control, that's the state that we're in. We reflect on pain of the past instead of growth in the past, and we develop this fear of the future that keeps us from rowing towards our dreams.
Wow. I don't know where I've heard this quote from, but we talk. Ooh, I'm trying to remember what's from, but it's essentially it's taking that rowing your boat metaphor, but like applying it to Jesus, applying it to God, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially, I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's like Jesus is rowing, right? Or no, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus or God is directing the boat, but you're the motor or you're
Okay.
rowing per se.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I did really like what you said there, because and his quote because that for me makes so much sense. And even if you're not
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, you could say like the universe if you really wanted to, or perchance, because some people are kind of interesting in the way they think because they think everything happens for a reason, but they don't believe in some greater entity. But if you
Yeah.
are not religious, think of it as like you are the motor, you are rowing your own boat, and wherever you decide to go, but you have to put in the work. But that entity or that perchance is steering you in a direction that it wants you to go. In my case, it'd be Jesus. Jesus is leading me
Mm-hmm.
in a direction where I want to go, or where he wants me to go. And it's my job to keep rowing. And kind of like what we were talking about, the
Yeah.
self comparison. Literally, if we compare ourselves to others and we get discouraged, we're not going to keep rowing that boat. We're going to eventually stop because
Mm-hmm.
then we think, well, if this guy's miles ahead of me, what chance do I have? And then I could talk about,
Yeah.
social media too, being one of the major causes of, self comparison to others. But even just like being in college, I mean, you probably experienced this too, man. I mean, you go to class and somebody raises their hand and they're way more prepared in the material than you are, and you have a test coming up, and you're like,
Yep.
oh, like she's really prepared or he's really prepared. I have not studied enough. I don't even know the answer to that
Yeah.
question, right? And you feel like lost. You feel like, man, I shouldn't even be here. Like, um, what's that? What's that saying? It's like, you feel like you're the only person in the room who hasn't got the agenda right, but it's like, oh, imposter syndrome. Like imposter syndrome. You ever heard of that? Like you feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I have.
you're with everybody else, but you feel like you don't belong there. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
I've had that a couple times where I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing. Um, but yeah, it kind of all goes back to God is steering. You just have to make sure that you keep on rowing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that analogy because we often we're the ones that want to control the
Yeah.
steering. We want to be the ones that are steering the ship. Um, like going back to literally the analogy that my teacher gave me about being the captain of your
Hmm.
own ship. Um, yeah, I mean, controlling so in relating control to faith and relating control to Jesus Christ is something that I've been reflecting on a lot lately is in the Gospel of John, John the Baptist drops an absolutely fire quote. He says, "I will increase and he will oh no, sorry. I will
And he will
decrease
increase.
and he
Yeah.
will increase." And I think that's huge and something that I have come up with now and talking about control is I tell myself to have the self-control to let go of control
Mm.
and allow him to take control
Wow.
and holding his hand just as tight as you can and praying on everything, truly reflecting on each day and the growth that you had, the growth and or regression that you went through each day. Um, because when you seek him enough, you seek him and his ability and the fruits of the Holy
Hmm.
Spirit that come with living a life with him. He truly will make your path
Yeah.
straight.
And I have kind of, when you said you really wanted to talk about control on the podcast, I did a little bit more research on it. And the more I read about control and what we, in our daily lives, it's almost like pride, almost how we're so prideful that we
Hmm.
need to control all these different factors. Um, but the more I read about control, it's almost like control is actually fear of not
Yeah,
doing well, fear of not, getting to that next level, and fear of failure. Like kind of what we were
yeah.
talking about.
Fear of failure is
Yeah,
huge.
can kind of like what we were talking about before, where it was the comfort zone and like afraid to go out of the comfort zone. Um, that is
Yeah.
just fear. I think of
Hmm.
fear in terms of like a brick wall that's kind of in front of you, and it's just kind of keeping you in this cage, like we talked about before, this cage, or it's a barrier between your comfort life here, and then on the other side, there's life and life more abundantly, which John 10:10 talks about a lot, and I love that Bible verse. Um, so could you talk a little bit about how control is so closely related to fear?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In biblical terms, um, there's a big difference between controlling like I was talking about earlier, being a control
Yeah.
freak and then being in
Mm-hmm.
control. And I'm happy that you brought up pride because pride is what cast Satan
Yep.
out of heaven. Pride, Satan got so prideful and he wanted to have control over
Mm-hmm.
even God. And that's exactly what got Satan cast out of heaven and onto the earth. And yeah, and then just in terms of fear, um control is absolutely a response to fear. Um I think that in my life I feel I have to do whatever it takes to control what I can control in all
Yeah.
moments, but most importantly when I am afraid and or under
Mm-hmm.
pressure. Um in football, my freshman year or I'm still a freshman, but my freshman season, I'm on to my sophomore
Yeah.
season now, but my whole freshman season, as soon as I was put in the game or I got to take some reps in practice and the spotlight or the pressure was on me, I could feel my heart racing and I was
Mm-hmm.
afraid. And I was always thinking about all these things that are outside of my control. Where the I'm a tight end, I play offense. So if I'm blocking somebody, where the defense is gonna line up or who's lining up across from me is always a
Yep.
big thing. And in those times, I didn't recognize the fact that if I just controlled myself, my mental
Mm-hmm.
ability, instead of worrying so much about what everyone else was going to do and worrying about who was lined up in front of me and worrying about what the coaches thought of me, that was always huge. Coming in as a freshman with such um, a rough around the edges coaching
Mhm.
staff, I would say. Um, that was always a big thing for me. Was I was afraid of what they were going to think of me, and never optimistic about what I could make them think
Yeah.
of me. Um, so yeah, being in control at all times. Well, controlling what you can control at all times, and but mostly in those times of fear, because when we are afraid, we do absolutely, as humans, have a tendency to just curl up and not want to be a part of it. And that goes back to the comfort zone talk. We just want to stay comfortable, stay on
Yeah.
autopilot. But when we're afraid, it's important to tap into our cognitive processing, our control processing, and and take action and attack each situation with optimism and
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
And I actually I think of control like fear, but I also think in terms of like a worldly sense, I feel like we have no control. Like we have control within
Hmm.
ourselves. Like I understand that part, and I think you're right. I do think though, like if there's an apocalypse or something crazy going on, we're not in control of that. You know, the food.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
There's nothing
nothing
we
we
can
can
do about
do.
that stuff.
I mean, if God, if if Jesus comes back tomorrow, like there's nothing we can do. You know, we're getting judged either way.
Nope.
So I I feel like we are in control, but in a grander scale, we're really not. Um,
Hmm.
but I think I really like what you said because it's like you need to have control of yourself, but you need to have control to be able to surrender control to God.
Hmm.
So in
Yeah.
in my personal life, like I love I'll talk about this all day long. I love Google Calendar and I love my schedule. I'm like I just like having a very nice, neat, planned out day. You know, I can like when I wake up in the morning, I go on a run, I come back, I read my Bible, I look at my schedule. I'm like, okay, here's everything I got for the day, and I know exactly what I need to get done. Um, so for me, that schedule is really hard to break. Like if somebody calls me and they this happens or this happens, I'm like, well, you know, if it's not that important to me, I won't make time for it, and it won't fit into a time slot during the Google Calendar, and
Hmm.
that's something I'm working on right now. Um,
Yeah.
but that's me being controlling. That's me being I'm controlling what I am choosing to do, right? Um,
Yeah.
but going back to the surrender aspect, it's like I need to surrender control of my schedule, right? And let's say my friend does call me that I haven't talked to in a while, right? And I pick up the phone and I talk to him for an hour, right? It's kind of in that sense where it's like surrender, take it in time with Jesus. Like you need to pick out a time, or sometimes it comes so suddenly where what if you're in the middle of something that you're already doing on your Google Calendar? What if you're already doing this, whatever? In that moment, you're like, well, I need to give this up. I need to completely give it all to God because in the end, that's kind of all that matters. Like to think of Earth as being like a trial period, right? It's almost like God's way of
Hmm.
saying like, okay, here is 80 to 100 years here. How are you going to conduct yourself in this world that I've created? Right? It's like a testing ground. And I think of it as are you going to control every aspect about you and close off God in a world that He created for us? Or are you going to let Him in and you can follow His path that He's made for you? You might not be able to see the path very clearly. I had a really good conversation last Thursday with my Bible study group that I do every Thursday night. It's a great group of guys. They all go to the gym. They all are in like HVAC services. They're
Oh
just
yeah.
really cool guys.
Yeah.
But we had a really good talk about identity and purpose and how our path for God is not always clear, and that's so true, right? And when we think about our path for God and we're on like a road with a car, right? And it's foggy out, that's kind of what our path looks like when we don't know who we are or we're struggling with something and we don't know where to go. But God gives us all the tools. He gives us the fog light for the car. We're able to kind of find our way through the fog, and eventually on the other side of the fog, we see our path. When we figure out that
Hmm.
letting go of the control and trusting God is what matters. And when we find that, then and only then we can find that path he has for us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of of the path, like God designed us with free
Mm,
will, and I think people take that idea like the wrong way. Like, oh, God gave me free will, so he can't be mad when I go get drunk
yeah.
later, right? Like he gave me the ability to want to do that. What I've learned a lot recently is God gave me the free will to choose him and to want him to be in my life and to want to follow his path instead of my own
Yeah.
path. He gave us the free will to make the decisions to like you said, like he designed our
Hmm.
path and we can't see it. But when we make the decision to walk down that path, that's exactly what he wants from us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like to talk about like
Hmm.
choosing the path that he
How
paved.
would you explain to somebody who's not Christian, um, the if God is all knowing topic, then why is like how if we have free will, how does he know what we're going to do? And you know what I'm kind of talking about, how people kind of use that
Yeah.
as like how would you explain that?
Yeah, so that's something that I get a lot is like how do you feel about like this God is all
Hmm.
knowing type deal? Like people are always trying to ask these like existential questions, like these huge
Yeah.
big questions about God, instead of like the little nitpicky
Hmm.
stuff. Um, what I've really come to realize, in like in like God always knows it even goes back to what you said, like everything happens for a reason. But what I've been reading up on lately is in the Gospel of John, the Last Supper. And what I think is really interesting in the Last Supper, Jesus straight up says, one of you will
Yep.
betray me. And they all start looking at each
Hmm.
other like, no way, like that's not going to be me. Is it
Yep.
you? Like, no, I would never do that. But then Judas does it anyways. In the face of money, money is the biggest, one of the biggest temptations in this world. And I mean, I've been on the biggest levels of gambling and losing all my money and constantly wanting and wishing I had
Yeah.
more money. When faced with this opportunity to get more money, something that is a treasure of this world and not a treasure laid up in heaven, Judas
Hmm.
folded. And he said, one of you will deny me. And Simon Peter, his best friend, who told Jesus that I would die
Yep.
for you, he denied him. And it's interesting, like, I kind of realized this, like, big. The day that I read this, exactly what I
Hmm.
just said, um, the day before, I woke up and I was like, all right, I didn't read yesterday. I got to
Yeah.
read today. And I was thinking that all throughout the day. Also, on a side note, something else that I've learned is if I don't read in the morning, I'm probably not going to end up reading that day because
That's that's so valid,
my
dude.
brain just gets
That's
so,
so
yeah.
valid.
I, I got to read in the morning because I do like reading before I go to sleep. But lately, especially the last 2 weeks with spring
Yeah.
practices just starting, when I'm back in my room at 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm ready to go to
Hmm.
sleep. So I like to prioritize reading in the morning. But I'm going throughout my day and like, I gotta read tonight. I gotta read tonight. I get to the night and I'm back in my room. It's probably 9 o'clock. I'm all tired. And I'm like, I gotta read. And I'm like, all right, after I take a shower, I'm gonna read.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I could almost feel like an outside voice saying, you know that you're not gonna end up
Mm,
reading. You know that you're not gonna do it. And I was almost like trying to combat that voice saying, I'm
yeah.
gonna do it. I'm gonna read. I get back in my room after my shower and I'm just like, all right, I'm ready to go sleep.
Mhm.
And I did a short little prayer before I slept and I was
Yeah.
passed out. And then when I read this the next day, it was like
Mhm.
crazy. I was like, holy
Yeah.
moly, this was me yesterday.
Mm,
I said I was going to do something and I knew throughout the day that I was going to do it. And then I got faced with it and I said, I still got to do it. But that voice in the back of my head saying, you're not going to read, that was, I saw that as God knowing that I wasn't going to do it.
mm,
And I gave into Satan's temptation at the very end when I got out of my shower. You don't need to read. It's
yeah.
fine. You'll read tomorrow. And I gave in to Satan's temptation. And so yeah, I mean, just that was what has like really hit me
Mhm.
recently. So the truth is, yes, God does know. Like God has this plan laid out for you, and He desires for you so bad to follow that
Yeah.
plan. I've seen like these cartoons in the past where it's like somebody going to heaven and God like presents to them. He's like, "All right, this is you. You had a family and you had a loving wife and you had 3 kids and you had a wonderful job that you really
Mhm.
enjoyed." And then the person that got into heaven or is like talking to God says, "Wait, God, I think you got the wrong guy. That's not me." And God is like, "Oh, no, sorry. This isn't you. This is who you were supposed
Oh,
to be." And I think that God desires for us so bad to reach that best version of ourselves. And He knows that you have the choice of getting there or not. And the choice of getting there only comes from submission
mm,
to Him. It comes from surrendering the control to Him. And so yeah, just in terms of that free will, and then God knows, like He'll put you in situations where He's gonna test you. Um the biggest thing to realize is that Satan tempts, but God tests. Satan will tempt you with these. He can even like put these thoughts in your head of lust, of wanting to chase money or whatever it is, do drugs, drink,
mhm.
alcohol. But God will put you in situations where I was even just last week. I was faced with this opportunity where I could have either stayed in and studied up on the playbook because I had practice at 6 a.m. the next morning, or I could have gone to Crowley's and tell myself that that I'm going to get a burger and then probably get faced the temptation of drinking with my
Yeah.
friends. And that was one of the, I don't want to say rare, but one of the few moments where I made the right decision, because the truth is I'm a human and I've let God down very
Mhm.
often. And but yeah, I guess the whole point of what I'm saying is He's gonna put you in situations where He gives you the choice to choose between His path and the path of your fleshly desires, or the path of this world, what the world calls you
Mm,
to do. And He knows what choice you're gonna make, but He still like desires you to make the choice for Him. And the biggest thing is when you make the wrong decision, when you choose to not follow His path, yeah, you gotta ask for His mercy. And something that I've been talking to Him a lot about lately is like, God, I understand that I really don't deserve it
yeah.
right now because you told me to do one thing and I did the other. and I deliberately disobeyed your law, your rule, and I really don't deserve your mercy right now, but I'm going to ask for it because I know that your grace will set me free, and I know that your love is the greatest gift of all
Mhm.
time. And you humbling yourself and becoming a man and laying down your life to set us free has set me free from this sin. Not to give me an excuse to sin, but to give me the grace to set my soul free. So, yeah, I kind of went on a
You're
rant
good.
there, but I hope I answered your question.
You did, in a long format, which is why we do a podcast, dude. I rant all the time, so don't even worry
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
I guess the way I would explain it to somebody who is asking that question is, yes, God is all knowing, but like you said, he still gives you certain choices, and but he's beyond time. He's beyond this realm.
Hmm.
So it's like it's a tricky question because I think because I wish I could answer it the best I can. Obviously, I'm not Jesus, but
Yeah.
I would say that we don't truly know how everything works. We don't truly
Hmm.
know, you know, if he obviously gave us free will because we were able to control certain things. We were able to control our body, our movements, um, but we are unable to control the things that happen to us. And I think
Hmm.
that's where God plays a role in it, right? Obviously, he plays a role in the biological part. We can talk about that, but I'm saying like we can control ourselves, like what we were talking about, but God gives us the opportunity to choose him. Even if he is all knowing, you can still choose. He still
Hmm.
wants to give you that
Yeah.
choice. And I think that is kind of what you were touching on.
Yeah. 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 To summarize my last whatever it was, 7 minutes of rambling, that would be a good way to put it into 2 sentences right there
Yeah.
for sure.
Um so I thought this would be kind of fun. You don't have to go too into detail about it, but I'm curious to see kind of how your progression was to finding God, finding Jesus. So, are you able to share a little bit of your testimony on how you grew so strong in your faith?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I love talking about, but I don't usually like give the full
Hmm.
story. I kind of really just make it short because it was the greatest moment of my life, but I do like to keep it more like I've always liked to keep it more
Yeah.
private. But I guess like now, like I realize that it's such a like I said, it's literally the greatest moment
Yeah.
of my life. So what I've been doing lately is like anybody who wants to know, you can know, and I'll tell you. So I'll try and give the story in the shortest but most detailed way
Okay.
possible. My entire life, I grew up in the Christian faith, the Catholic faith. I went to Catholic school my
Yeah.
entire life. Um, from the moment I was born, I got baptized at like maybe 4 months old. Like my mom has always been huge in my life of faith. Um, and so I kind of just grew up as like the term like lukewarm
Hmm.
Christian you might have
Yep.
heard before. Like somebody I believed, I acted on it most of the time. Like I went to church at school, I went to church on Wednesdays and then I went with my family on Sunday. Like I did all the stuff that I thought I had to do. And I got confirmed my freshman year of high school, which is something that I didn't even really like know what it was all
Yeah.
about. Um, and then after that, really, like my confirmation, after that, I started going through a lot of trials in my
Mm.
life. My first year of high school, I'm still in a Catholic school, but I just like I feel like I'm losing control and I'm always trying to know what everyone else is doing. I'm always trying to be a part of the popular group. I'm always trying to be the center of attention. And always constantly seeking those things caused me a lot of stress. And I went through a few like rough patches, and the biggest thing was I was listening to sad music,
Oh, jeez.
which something that I've learned in my life is listening to sad music only makes situations worse. So I now do not ever listen to
I
sad music because,
I actually saw a study recently that
man,
actually said the opposite. They're saying, yeah,
really?
but I get what you're saying because I actually have experienced that too, where I feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw a study where listening to sad music while you're sad actually helps you work through the emotions you're feeling. So
Yeah,
there,
I could see that for
I don't
sure.
know. Let's wait for more studies to come out. But sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm happy that you jumped in there because I would say it's definitely different for everybody. Like for me, listening to that type of music just like made me feel like I was drowning in my
Mm,
sadness. And in the moment, like when you're sad, sometimes it feels good to be sad. Like it feels good to be like almost like play the victim.
oh yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's just like something that just wasn't helping me was listening to that type of music. So I go through my sophomore year and everything really gets better. Gets a
Hmm.
lot better for me. And I'm loving my football journey, and I'm playing a little bit of varsity as a sophomore, which was
Yeah.
exciting. I get into basketball. I'm playing JV basketball with all my best buddies, and the biggest thing was I had a girlfriend. And that was the first time in my life where I had like somebody outside of my family who like
Mm,
loved me. And so that was huge. Go through my sophomore year was great. Summer going into junior year, great. For the first time ever, I'm a varsity starter in my
let's
favorite
go.
sport, and we had a great season. We went 8-2. Came up short, lost in the third round of the playoffs, which was devastating. But in that time in the playoffs, the second week of the playoffs, um, my girlfriend and I split up,
Mm,
like a mutual split up, and it was really like a difficult thing for me to deal with at the
yeah.
time. And then all of a sudden, the thing that I was leaning on, which was football, was gone. So then that was the moment where I felt I had lost all control.
Mm,
I had almost nothing to love. Um, a big thing for me as a kid, always growing up, is I would always talk to my mom
yeah.
about stuff. And I wasn't talking to my mom. I wasn't praying. I was like, my faith was like not drained. It was still there. Like I believed in God. I believe in Jesus Christ, but I'm not ever praying. I'm not doing anything to
Hmm.
show it. So I'm like lost. And we had just moved out of we moved out of our house, and we were living with my grandparents for a little while. We move into a new house, and I bring out of a box my Bible. It says really cool. My parents got it for me. It says my name on it, and a little message. 2016 was the year they gave it to me, and we moved into this new house in
Mm,
2024. And up until that point, I had never opened this Bible. I open this box, I pull this Bible out, and I open it to the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form or void, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the
mm,
darkness. And I was like, okay, all right. God separated the light from the darkness. God saw that the light was good. And that like stayed on my mind for a really long time. I tried out like reading every night, and I this is big for anybody who's listening who doesn't read. I would advise not to do this actually. I tried reading the Bible from cover to
yeah.
cover.
Don't.
I tried starting in Genesis And reading through Genesis and going through Exodus, that did not work. Why? Because there's a lot of Genesis that's good, and there's a lot of it that is really boring and doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
And then you get to the part
So,
with all the names and the entire
yes,
family
oh my
tree, and you're
gosh,
like,
yeah.
okay,
This guy had a
yep,
son. He lived until he was 100 and
yep,
whatever, and then he had a son. Yeah. Yeah, horrible. So I was like, all right, I give up. I'm not reading. I can't do this. I go on a retreat my junior year of high school. It's called the Kairos retreat. Kairos is a Greek word for
mm,
God's time. We live in in Chronos, which is like the world's
yeah,
time or whatever. So we call it Kairos, God's time. Separating ourselves from the world and entering into just 3 days of being together with your brothers, no phones, no electronics, led by seniors. And I had always heard great stories about it. I was really excited. I knew that it was a faith-based retreat. They advertise it as like, even if you're, because like my school, Lake Catholic High School in Mentor, Ohio, is a Catholic high
mm,
school, but you don't have to be Catholic to go there.
okay,
So they advertise it as like, even if you're not Catholic or you're not a believer, you can still come and have a great time with your
right,
friends. But I knew that it was like a
mm-hmm,
faith-based retreat. So I brought my Bible. I don't know why, but I I brought it because I figured that I would have to do some reading out of it. And so we're going through this retreat, and just the whole time, this is gonna sound really weird, but at this retreat house, the chapel in the retreat house was really like creepy. It was
hmm,
really odd. This chapel, it was dark. Everybody who had ever been just always like had a weird feeling about it. And I heard a lot of stories about this chapel, about how people like went in there late at night and the blinds were like swinging around when the windows weren't open and they could like hear voices in the chapel. And this stuff like freaked me out. Like I was
mm,
terrified. I was like terrified that there was like demons in the chapel, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of Satan's Satan's battlefields trying to take over people who are on a deep spiritual high in that situation. But in the chapel, there's this mirror, and I don't know why there's a mirror in there, but I'm very thankful that there is, and I'll tell why in a minute. There's this mirror, and somebody who went the year before told me this story about how they were in the chapel late at night, and he looked in the mirror, and he saw Satan in the mirror. And that's like a really like deep thing. Some people are like, "Oh wow, that's crazy," and then play it off thinking that that
yeah,
kid's nuts. And me is like trying to think through that, and I'm just like, "Holy, that is terrifying." Like I don't want
mm-hmm,
to do that. I don't ever want to see that. And so we go into the chapel on the first night because that's where our religion teacher who led the retreat gave his testimony, his witness. All the leaders, all the student leaders give their testimony slash witness, but we do it like down in the basement in this like little
yeah,
fun room. But he wanted to give his in the chapel. And I didn't have my phone, but it was probably 9 o'clock at night. It was really dark. And everybody in there is just having the same feeling of like it's really
mm-hmm,
creepy in here. And they didn't like it. So we go through the night, we go back in, everybody's asleep. Me and a couple of my buddies go back in to this chapel, pitch black. And we're like, all right, we've heard all
yeah,
these stories. We want to know what this is all about. We go into the chapel, pitch black, and we're like we're like looking for something
mm-hmm,
weird. We're looking for something to go wrong. I don't know why. I was
curiosity,
there. I
yeah,
was terrified. And we were looking for something off. We didn't see anything. We didn't see anything go wrong. But when we left, everybody kind of like got up and was like, all right, I'm getting
mm-hmm,
out of here. And I kind of just like sat in there for an extra couple seconds and I was just like looking and my heart's racing because I was afraid. I was like, all right, nothing's going on. I walk out and my friends are standing there in a circle waiting for me and they're like ready to pray. And as a Catholic school, you would think that like we're all these like deep faith kids and that we pray about everything. That couldn't be further from the truth,
Mhm.
unfortunately. Um, so this is like kind of something odd to me that I'm seeing my friends in a circle holding hands ready to pray. And they're like, "Hey, come on, like we want to pray." And so we join in, we grab hands, we're praying. I don't remember what was specifically said, but we just wanted to pray for like each other, pray that nothing that ever gives us fear hinders our relationship
Mhm.
with God. And and I was like, okay, that's great. And we kind of like went to bed on that note. The next day, I going through the day heard so many powerful testimonies, so many wonderful words of appreciation and all these amazing stories about people's relationships
Yeah.
with God. And like I mentioned earlier, I was on such a spiritual high. Like I was literally like I felt like I was high on Jesus.
Jesus high. Yep.
And that's such a great
Yep.
feeling. Yeah. And so it's late at night, we're out by the fire pit. We have a nice fire, we're playing some good songs, and I was like, "All right, I want to go back inside now." I'm going back inside, and there's the statue of Jesus in front of the retreat house. And I was like, for some reason, I looked at the statue and I was just like, Jesus, I'm not afraid. I put on the full armor of
Mhm.
God, which is a verse that I just happen to know about that I shouted out earlier in Ephesians
Yep.
chapter 6. I said, Jesus, I'm not afraid. I put on your armor. I put on the full armor of God. And I go inside and I'm talking to my friends. Probably an hour, hour and a half goes by, and it's late again. And we want to go explore outside because this retreat is like in the middle of
Mhm.
nowhere on an acre of farmland. Like we wanted to go outside and explore. And before we go outside, we stop back into the chapel. And this time we have all these lanterns and flashlights and stuff. And we're walking through, just looking around. And I stop in front of this mirror and I'm looking at myself in the mirror. And I can barely see myself because it's dark. And then one of my friends comes by and shines his flashlight in the mirror. And when the light was in the mirror, I saw the face of Jesus Christ looking back at me. And I remember just like looking and saying, "Oh my God." For the first time, I said that term in a different way than I had ever
Yeah.
meant it. And I felt like my soul had just a huge blanket that was so heavy. And in that moment, when I saw his face, the blanket just fell off and my soul felt
Wow.
free. And I was like, oh my God. I was just in awe of what I was looking at. I went back to my room. Well, first off, I told like 3 people, and they thought that it was just like so cool, but I could tell that they kind of thought that I was like talking a little
Mhm.
crazy. But I go back to my room and I open up my Bible. I hadn't opened it up yet since I'd been there, but I open it up, and the very first thing I do is open it up to the beginning again. And I look right at the beginning. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And I just like had this moment of realization where I was in a dark place where I was afraid the previous night, and I lost that fear. And in that same dark
Mhm.
space, even though it's kind of like his house, I guess, his uh his area, this dark space, in the presence of the light on the mirror, he
Mhm.
was there. And that is something that has just always stuck with me. And from that moment, ever since I left that retreat house, I have desired to be in that same Jesus high all
Yeah.
the time. And I was like, all right, I gotta start reading. And I did this thing where I just opened up and I read from wherever because I didn't want to go back to reading the boring stuff again. So I'm in the New Testament. I was like, okay, wait. So told Jesus that I put on his full armor. So let's go to the spot in the Bible where it
Yeah.
says that. And I read Paul's letter to the
Mm.
Ephesians. And I just keep reading and reading and reading. And eventually, well, I mean, like night after night, because I'm not a very good reader. So I usually read a chapter or two before I
Yeah.
get sick of it. At least back then I did. And I get to this point where I'm just like, holy moly, like this stuff is so good. I got to start
Yep.
sharing it. So I create this private story on Snapchat that I like posted the link to it, and anybody could join, and it's like a verse of the
Yeah.
day story. So I just started posting verses of the day, and people like kept talking to me like how this was like helping them grow, and I couldn't have been any more happy. And there were so many things that I thought I knew then, where looking back now, I was just like, there's so much more to learn, and there's still so much more to learn. Um, so then fast forward like a full year, I just continue to try and grow each day and learn more and more each day, and I'm just like becoming this, I guess, a leader for him. And I become like the leader of this retreat as a
Yeah.
senior. And I'm so excited to go back because this is the place where it all started for me pretty much. And I go back, and the very first thing I do is I walk to that chapel and I look in that mirror. And the smudges on the mirror, just for like half a second, the smudges on the mirror conform to that same face that I
Wow.
saw the night that I was there. And that same feeling on my soul happened again. And it was just like reassuring, I guess. Like, wow, how truly amazing God makes
Yep.
me feel. And like all the way up to now, like I guess you and I have kind of connected not just through class, but I started an Instagram page um due to some inspiration from others, even some from you. I started up an Instagram account where I'm trying my best to just spread the word of God and give him glory in everything I do. And um, I'm just reading as much as I can. I definitely do not read as often as
Yeah.
I should, and I definitely don't digest it as well as I should. Sometimes I'm on
Yeah.
autopilot when I read, but I mean, up until now, like looking back on it and how much I've grown, like I'm almost all the way through the New
Wow.
Testament. And if you would have told me that, like when I first
Mhm.
started reading, I would have said like, no way, like I can't
Mhm.
read all this. I've never been a good reader by any terms. I like don't like reading
Yeah.
at all. But I mean, everything that I've learned in here and everything that he has put on my heart, I'm just so unbelievably thankful for. I'm so thankful that he chose me to follow him, and I'm trying my hardest. I really want him to know I'm really trying my hardest each day. Um, and some days I'm actually
Yeah.
not, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's my story. That's why I'm in the place that I am. And looking back on it, like if I went back and I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have made as many
Mhm.
mistakes as I made, and I wouldn't have done as many bad things as I did.
That's the beauty
But
of it, though.
but if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be in the
Yep.
situation that I'm in now. Going back to what we talked about earlier, everything happens
Yep.
for a reason, on God's timing, by God's will. Um, so I would say my biggest takeaway from my own
Mhm.
story is doing exactly what Jesus said before he took up his cross when he was praying in the garden, and he was afraid. He was sweating blood. He was literally terrified of what was about to happen. And that was like the human side of him
Mhm.
that we see. And he was speaking to the Father, and he said, Father, I am afraid, but your will be done,
Yep.
not mine. So that would be my biggest takeaway from my own story is the times that I find the most the most joy in my life is when I do
Yep.
His will. Because His will brings long-lasting, eternal joy, and the temptations of this world bring very
Yep.
temporary
Mhm.
joy. I think that it's no mistake that temptation and temporary are very similar, like they literally have the same first four letters. So temptation is temporary, but God is
Yep.
forever.
That was amazing, dude. That was a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Um, and to summarize that last little piece, it's almost like faith begins where control ends.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
kinda tying it that whole conversation we had prior to your testimony, that's like a perfect, like, bow you put on the present right there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Faith begins where control ends. Yeah. I'm gonna have to shout out another
Go
spot in the
for it.
Bible here. I mean, in Hebrews chapter 11, um, it just goes through all of the major stories of the Bible in this one
Yep.
short chapter, and it says, "By faith, Abraham did this. By faith,
Mhm.
Moses did this. By faith, all these people got these things accomplished." And you're absolutely right. Like faith begins where control ends. So they let go of their need to be in control of their flesh and gave the control to God and through faith in Him. And the verse of the day on my account yesterday actually was Jesus said to them, "By your faith it will be done."
Yep. Yep.
Somewhere Matthew chapter 9 verse 29, I believe. It was when He healed two
Mm.
blind men, because they believed in His ability, they believed that He could get it done, and they submitted to Him, and He got it done for their sake. So I absolutely love what you just said there. I'm actually gonna write that in my quotes right
I
now.
could maybe give you another one that kinda ties this up pretty good. I was thinking about
Hmm.
it as you were talking. How do I put it? It's like control is the illusion that keeps you from experiencing peace, like real found peace in your
Hmm.
soul.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I like that too.
All right, man. We're coming up on about an hour and a half, roughly ish. That's crazy. We've been talking
Yeah,
for a
it's
minute.
been a long talk here.
Um,
Yeah.
but I guess to kind of end this off, if anybody is, struggling right now, anybody listening, maybe just with their faith or kind of just believing that maybe God is really real and He's there. Um, maybe what would you give? What advice would you give to somebody that's feeling far from God in maybe like or maybe in like a quiet season of their life?
Yeah, I would say I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity for Him to come to me at such a young age. And I want people out there to know that you can, like, that can
Hmm.
happen to you. And it didn't happen to, like, for some people, it does happen in times of doubt. For me, it happened when I got away from that doubt and I
Yep.
submitted and I put on the armor, like I said. Like, that's when He truly came to me. That's when He helped me realize His power and His light. And the biggest thing that I would want to say is everyone has always heard the phrase, you get out what you
Hmm.
put in. And that goes back to what we said earlier and working hard and you get what you work for. But it 100% applies the same way with God.
Yep.
I have learned that when I'm not putting the time in, when I'm not working for Him, when I'm not walking in love like He calls us to do, when I'm not digesting His word, my life is gonna go all separate ways. And that's the time when you feel like you've lost
Yeah.
control. The times where you feel like you are in control is when He gives you back the control because you took the time out of your life to give it to Him. And it being a Christian by no means is easy. It's not easy. The easiest thing to do is confine to what this world wants, to give in to your fleshly desires, to go drink, smoke, whatever it is, to pursue that woman or man in a lustful way. That's the easiest thing to do, because that's what your flesh body wants. But we are 100% flesh and we are 100% soul, just the same way that Jesus was 100% man and 100% God. He designed us in a specific way, and when you submit to him and you take his hand, he can and will work wonders in your life. And that comes from giving him the time. And the biggest thing is the power of prayer. My prayer life needs to be much better. I don't pray nearly as often as I should, and I don't confess nearly as often as I should. But praying, as crazy as it sounds, changes your life. And when you first start, it can feel really weird because it feels like you're just talking to yourself. But in those times when you are genuinely speaking to him, like we talked about earlier, like he already knows what's going on. He knows your thoughts. He knows what you did today. But when you take the time out of your day to tell him, to have this conversation, he will answer, and he takes so much out of that, especially when you are genuinely sorry for what you have done wrong and you genuinely apologize. That is when you and your relationship with God is the strongest. And this is not coming from a man who is perfect by any means. This is coming from a man who has been broken down and has been built back up by Jesus.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very appreciative of you, Ryan, for having me on here, for having these great conversations. You've been helping me grow a lot lately, just in everything that you've been doing on social media, and even just your presence in the classroom is always felt. So
Yeah, even though sometimes it's hard to answer her questions, man. I don't know.
It's tough sometimes. We're both front row sitters, but we kind of just take the time to sit and listen, I feel like.
All right, Max Barnes, everybody, man. Thank you so much, bro.
Ryan Shell's the GOAT, man. Gotta love this. Inside the Shell podcast, started listening just a few weeks ago, but already been helping me grow 100%. And I'm very grateful for this time with you, brother.
Appreciate you coming on, man. It's a little bit of a time commitment, but I truly feel like I have some great conversations with people, and you are just another one on that list, man. Another great conversation that I get to experience, and it's truly a blessing. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I guess the quote I can leave you guys with for today is: the tighter you hold on to something, the more you lose. And take our conversation today with just the fact that if you are truly struggling in your life, don't hold on. Let go and let Jesus help you out. Let the Lord show you the path.
Yep.
And yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Hold on to what's true.
So if you guys want any more information on the Inside the Shell podcast, feel free to head over to Instagram. That's where I do pretty much all my social media stuff, at Inside the Shell podcast on Insta. And if you want to follow the main account, Our Show Lifts is awesome. And then I will also plug Max's Instagram and his what's your Instagram for the daily Bible verse?
Yeah, my faith page is on both Instagram and TikTok at Christian_motivation40. I just do daily verses. Sometimes every once in a while I'll put out a really long video, but I started to get the feeling that people don't make it through those videos, so I try to keep my verse of the days under 1 minute.
Our people's attention spans are pretty cooked for today, so
myself included. I can't blame them.
Thank you so much, Max. I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.